Hey, Phoenix Trinidad here, the host of Let's Build a Cult. Just wanted to jump into the intro of this episode. And if you're new to the show, I don't normally do an intro for the episodes, but I just needed to provide some context for this episode in particular. But before I do that, I just wanted to say a quick thank you to everybody that's listened to the podcast so far. Thank you for enjoying it and listening to it and sending me messages about how you laughed and learned stuff. I don't know. Somebody sent me a message and said they learned something from the podcast. Not my intention, but happy for you. Anyway, if you enjoyed the podcast, please send it to somebody and just word of mouth, all that shit. Share it along, share the reels, whatever. Anyway, but this podcast, this episode is with Clare McIvor, and she has a really interesting story. She was on 60 Minutes and everything because she's an ex-evangelical whistleblower, cult survivor, alleged cult survivor. Please don't sue me. God, I don't want to get sued. But she has a really, really interesting story, and that's why I got her on this pod. But I actually recorded a couple of episodes of Let's Build a Cult last year before I added video and all those things, just to give you guys some context. So, and then I interviewed Clare last year, and it got a little bit too real, and it got a little bit dark, and it kind of changed the way that I wanted the format of this show to be. So you're going to hear us reference that in this podcast. You're going to hear us say that she changed she blew up the first season of Let's Build a Cult, which wasn't her intention. It was just I hadn't figured out what I wanted the show to be yet. And I might release that as an episode at some point if you guys want to hear it. She has a really interesting story. She has her own podcast called Unchurchable Pod. And yes, I just wanted to provide some context to that. So, and this episode does have a couple of dark themes and yada, yada, yada. So, because she's actually from an actual cult, so it's, but it's funny. It's good. It's good stuff. Claire's the best. We've had some really interesting conversations. I've learned a lot from her. And so go check out her podcast. But listen to this one first because it's really interesting and fun. And we both had a really good time. And share the pod, do all that. Thank you. See you later.
Let's build a cult. 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 Let's build a cult.
Welcome to Let's Build a Cult, the show that asks, what would you do if you were suddenly elected the leader of a cult? I am your host and cultsultant, Phoenix Trinidad. And today I'm joined by Clare McIvor. I'm going to let you introduce yourself. How do you introduce yourself?
Oh, look, that depends on the day. Sometimes it's just ma'am. Sometimes, I do dabble in comedy, but really I'm a podcaster and blogger, commentator in the whole political, ex-evangelical sphere. But basically, I think ex-evangelical shitposting is my ministry.
Yes.
But I am a cult whistleblower too. So,
okay. Yes.
that's I call it a cult. I'm a whistleblower, yes. From something that I have publicly called a cult.
Yes. Okay. And that's the thing about cults. They don't call themselves a cult.
No.
Okay.
They're truth bearers. They are they are the answer. There's only one question, clearly, and they are the answer to that. But, it's a little bit like that.
I'm going to run you through how this podcast works.
Oh, please do.
This is going to be the most, I think, interesting. This could be a complete train wreck, and I'm totally prepared for that.
Well, I feel like you can just... I train wrecked you last time because we recorded in October last year before the 60 Minutes, the age thing, before all of my life blew up a little bit. And I think maybe it was a bit more serious than you'd expected. And I walked away and went, that wasn't funny. But let's try this again.
Well, that did change the whole perspective of the show. But all right, so this is now the structure of it.
This is now the structure.
Since you ruined the first one.
Okay, I'm sorry about that.
All right, so the show is partly a thought experiment. It's a part role-playing game and a weird sort of job interview.
Right.
Your goal is to build the most successful cult that you can imagine.
Mm-hmm.
And whether or not, and whatever that means to you, I assume it's going to mean something very specific to you, but whatever that means to you, that's what we're going with.
Okay.
I am your cultsultant.
All right.
So you can ask me any questions, even though I feel like in this dynamic, I'm definitely going to be asking more questions.
Okay.
But basically, there's 3 stages. So I'm going to, the preparation stage where I'm going to vet your leadership and experience.
Oh, I have extensive leadership experience.
Yeah.
All gained from within a high demand group
Okay.
that I publicly called a cult. So
we'll get to that.
bring it, bitch.
And then we're gonna do the build section, and then where we work out the logistics of what the ideal cult is.
Okay.
And then I'm gonna throw some scenarios at you in the test phase, which might not be as interesting as what actually happened. It's like in terms of real scenarios that you've encountered, but that's what the cards are for. That's what the dice are for.
All right. Okay.
So, Clare
All right,
McIvor,
let's do this.
are you ready to build a cult?
Yes. Absolutely.
Okay, so we're entering the preparation phase. So welcome to the preparation phase. And this is so funny because it's a series of standard questions, but it's just a whole different ball game with you. So, but I'm just going to ask them how I would normally ask them.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
What comes to mind when you think of the word cult?
Home. I'm sorry, that's macabre.
That's so fucked.
Home is what comes to mind.
Yeah.
Taco nights,
Okay.
coercive casseroles,
Coercive casseroles.
very, very gendered sandwiches, and certainty.
Okay. There's so much to unpack here. I feel like this should be a 3-hour podcast, but we can't do that.
Yeah, because I've got a date after this that I actually have already kind of, I already go twice. But, and on the way in, I was actually chatting to another ex-evangelical about this thing, about sandwich platters and church. Like the church that we grew up in, like as with a lot of evangelical churches, there's very strict gender roles, very strict. Only the women would be requested to make like sandwiches or like stuff for potlucks. And there was like this hierarchy of who was like in favor based on who got to do the egg salad sandwiches and who got stuck with like the curried egg sandwiches, because eggs seemed to be like this kind of, hierarchical symbol of power within the women's kind of circle.
But curried eggs weren't?
Curried eggs. Everyone hates curried eggs. It's like the egg salads where it's at. The ham, cheese and relish versus the ham, cheese and pickles was also a very nuanced conversation about your standing within the cult. This wasn't what mine was like. It's just more evangelicals all over the place. But I think what comes to mind for me is cults are very shiny on the outside. They're very love bomby. And actually in times like we've just been through with the pandemic is a perfect time for radicalization to bubble up. Yeah. Because as humans, we're so drawn to tribe and we're so drawn to connection, and we're meant to be that way, but we also flee from things that make us feel unsafe. And so in times of economic downturn or pandemics or stuff like that, people can go seeking certainty, and so then they encounter these groups that love bomb them, and all of a sudden your social isolation disappears and you get just this intoxicating experience of everyone laughing at your jokes, everyone coming to your party, everyone inviting you to theirs, like never sitting at home on a Friday night going, what am I going to do, because you've got youth group or you've got dinner, you've got a progressive dinner or you've got a potluck or you've got this or you've got that. And the other thing is it's really intoxicating because it gives you purpose. You're being told God wants you to take over this for him, or, you are assured of freedom, you're assured of victory. And actually, like a couple of weeks ago, a few friends and I went to a Planet Shakers church just because one of them wanted to see what it was like. And I thought, this is a mega church, it's fine, it's whatever. It won't be anything like what I'd experienced. And the message was assured of victory. And I was like, wow. And then you've got migrant stories and stories of social isolation and all that kind of stuff being woven into the narrative. So they use these really powerful things and love bombing and all of that kind of stuff to get you in the door. But then, I'm not saying this about Planet Shakers, I'm saying this about cults in general, and I'm not calling Planet Shakers a cult. Can you tell I've been threatened with defamation a lot in the last year? But yeah, it's appealing to these very base human desires to try to channel you towards their goals. Yeah. And it's that piece about certainty. If you do this, you will have victory. If you do this, you will be judged by God. That starts to kind of erode that sense of personal agency. So I always like to say there's this bell curve with cults. And if you get in, there may be some benefits. You may get more friendships, you may get more confidence. But if you don't jump off at the top of the bell curve, things are going to slide really fast for you. And then it can be really, really difficult to leave.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that leads into my next question, because it is like, can a good cult exist? But it sounds like it's just that first part. Like that first part of the bell curve is like, because that is the thing, right? You get all that community and you get a purpose, and that's obviously very appealing to like really vulnerable people.
Yeah.
But I don't know, like I assume because of your experience, you've done a lot of, you would know more about cults than I do. Can a good one exist, basically?
No.
Like, okay.
But
That's fair.
I'll say this though, because there's a couple of pieces here. One is that a cult always revolves around a central charismatic character. And two is that a cult always involves a thought reform process where people are channeled towards being more like that central character or that central doctrine. But the bell curve is really interesting because, let me tell you, you can be on a smooth kind of, smooth trajectory. You're reaching the top of the bell curve. If you decide to leave, then you will lose everything, and you progress down the other side of that bell curve really, really fast.
Right.
So, I mean, I think about cults a lot because, I run the Unchurchable podcast, and I just started running another podcast called Survivors Discuss, which is dark, but important. And I mean, obviously I think about it a lot because there's a lot of people who've survived pretty hardcore situations that tell me their stories, and I'm a nerd and I love reading. And the first joke I always make is, you got to read the fine print. Like, you got to make sure that you're joining a sex cult and not an anti-sex cult, But even in that, I'm sure if you had a chat to Alison Mack from Nexium, who's just gotten her jail sentence commuted down from I think it was 17 years down to about 3 years. And that was the cult that had Keith Raniere in it, and there was branding, and there was hardcore.
Right. Yeah, well, I was talking about that on the weekend.
Yeah, and it was pretty hardcore. That was a hardcore sex cult.
Yeah. That was the one that had the lady from Smallville, right?
Yes, Alison Mack, yes.
Yeah.
I'd say that, she'd probably be like, no, definitely join the anti-sex cult. That's better. So the grass is always greener. But there's always something in the fine print, and there's always a lot of othering. So, the group that I exited is quite known for its anti-LGBT stance. They've had leaders who are in the Australian Christian, a leader who was in the Australian Christian lobby's no campaign for the plebiscite. There's my ex-husband, who is now out and proud, but while we were still married, he was put at the front of a campaign to disendorse Darren Chester, who was a Nationals MP, over his support for marriage equality. That was kind of a watershed moment for us because, Patrick knew he was gay and I knew that he wasn't not gay, but was still just holding on to this idea that we could make happily ever after in the old definition of it. So, there was stuff. There was, coordinated efforts to get people to sign up to political parties, and there was coordinated efforts to make the backlash seem bigger than it actually was. It was interesting.
Yeah. Well, the next question is, what's the highest position of power you've been in?
Pastor's daughter, I think.
Yeah.
No, power in a cult is interesting because really there's only ever one person who has power.
Yeah.
And everybody else just gets sniffs of it and then weaves back out again. And this is my observation across a whole lot of reading, a whole lot of chats, is there's only ever one central person, and that central person is happy to give up certain appearances of power, but very rarely actual power. And so there might be these revolving inner circles of leadership. So I have been a youth leader. I've been an acting music director. I've been an assistant music director. I've done worship leading a lot, and I do miss singing. I really do miss singing. I used to run a group called Pizza for Jesus, which was
Pizza for Jesus.
Pizza for Jesus, which was getting the young kids over and teaching them about the Bible. The actual Bible, though, that was I should have kind of come up with my own version. So I was in a circle. I've done stage time at overseas conferences on the music team.
Right.
So
outside of, once you've left, have you had like a position of power, and like how does that feel compared to within the cult?
Yeah, this is a super funny question, isn't it? We're
Yeah.
just doing really well on the gags today. We always knew that it was difficult. How do you make talking with a cult survivor really, really funny?
Yeah.
Alleged cult survivor.
Yeah.
Look, when we were managed out the door at my dad's church, and then basically we were shunned, is how I describe it.
Right.
The first thing I did was we went to another church in town that wasn't a cult, just a normal Baptist. And because like I'm a fairly sparkly personality, I'm not unlike my dad like that.
Yes.
I could run a cult, Phoenix.
Yes.
I could.
I'm seeing it, yeah.
And it's a bit of a wrestle because like very quickly within the first, I think, year, I was a worship leader, and I do MD, so music director on a Sunday when I wasn't worship leading. We also were running a small group Bible study while our lives were just being shredded. The plebiscite was happening. We were copying calls from people and a lot of abuse because a lot of people in our old town didn't know that we'd left, and so we were trying to kind of keep things quiet, so we weren't going to cop harassment from the old crew, and it was really icky. So, but being a part of a healthy church where there aren't coercive control mechanisms, where there's no kind of love bombing, the thought reform processes aren't there. There's no milieu control, which is what an academic, Robert Lifton, calls control over what you're reading and watching and consuming information wise. There were none of those things, so it felt okay. Where it started to feel not quite so okay for me was in the lead up to the Nick Mackenzie story. So that ran before the election that my sister was successful in getting into Parliament on. Like a lot of leaks about branch stacking had come out in the year before that. I knew about them, and I'd been saying no to media for probably 7 years. Because I didn't want to trash family, but I did feel honour bound to stand up for LGBT people and women and people who need reproductive rights and stuff like that, and knowing what the doctrines are inside that group. Anyway, blah, blah, blah. But what happened around that time is what a lot of people don't know is like 3 of us went on 60 Minutes. And I think there was about 5 of us were in the age spread. And there was, I think, maybe 4 or 5 stories that ran in the age. There was a few that ran in the ABC that I didn't do interviews for. They got source material off my blog, which is public knowledge. But what happened is, in addition to all of those people, there was several others that were background.
Yeah.
And journalists do that to cover their asses and to make sure that every story is corroborated and to make sure that you don't get somebody who's an absolute loony who is making up wild stories and going, they're lizard people, and with no corroboration. So there was a lot of others who were behind the scenes who had corroborated stuff, told their own stories, all that kind of thing. I got a lot of emails from them saying, I've been contacted by this person or this journal or that journal, are they safe to talk to? And that started to feel icky because stage time as a song leader in a healthy church, no big deal. Doing Bible studies with a whole lot of people who are peers and it's just you're just coordinating the group, that's safe. But when people come to you go, help me make this life decision, that's when I go, whoa, don't want to be my dad here.
Right.
That makes me recoil because And there's quite a lot of people out there who have exited that church or adjacent churches or affiliated churches and have pretty horrendous stories. And when they call me and go, should I do this or should I do that? That makes my stomach drop to my toes.
Right.
Yeah, that makes me really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So, because it's not, cults aren't in the big and shiny.
Mm-hmm.
It's in the one-to-one. It's in handing over your agency or decision-making power to somebody else. And the reason that religion dovetails so nicely with cults is because the first person you externalize your power to is God. And so when you have somebody come in as a layer under that and go, I have a special line to God, listen to me, then you've got something that can get really, really interesting really, really fast.
God, that is interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Well, that's okay. Well, congratulations. You are now the leader of a cult.
thank
in
you.
this hypothetical.
Thank you. Yes.
I don't know how this is going to work, but
I saw your brain go, oh, we can go down a rabbit hole. No, keep it funny.
Yeah,
keep
no,
it
no.
funny.
Well, I think it's-
Hey.
I like the idea of doing this with somebody that has been in a cult because it
Alleged cult.
alleged cult. Am I going to get in trouble at any point?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think they'll just go after me. It's
Okay,
fine.
I'm happy with that.
I
That's
have
fine.
no money. Come take it all. Staying POV is a life choice I make now.
Well, I think it's important to do this with somebody that was actually a cult survivor, and I think it provides a lot of interesting context, and it definitely has changed my perspective on this entire podcast. But
Again, I'm so sorry. I really hate it when I just accidentally throw a grenade into somebody's plans to just blow it up.
no, it works. I mean, I want to do this. The idea of this podcast is to do it with as many different people as I can.
I just spilt coffee on my boob.
That's
And
fine.
like I said, I've got a date after this. I've accidentally shaved off half my eyebrow this morning. Don't ask, it happened. I've forgotten mascara, so there's no point in batting my eyelids, and I've just spilt coffee on my boob. Done
Today's
well.
going to be such a fun day for you.
It's going to be
All
great.
right. So we're going to move over into the build phase.
Okay, yep.
So this is where the hypothetical comes in. So you are now the leader of a cult.
Yes.
However that makes you feel. We provided some context for that. This is where the first dice roll comes in. This is
Okay.
going to determine how many people we're going to hypothetically give you.
Oh, man.
And we're going to multiply. So it's a D20, so it's a 1 to 20 die. And we're going to multiply it by a factor of 50. So whatever you roll is multiplied by a factor of 50. And that's how many people I'm going to give you in your hypothetical cult.
I'm uncomfortable having just done this motion for an extreme amount of time while making eye contact with a man on a video TV show. Don't ask me about the time that I ordered a burrito and ate in front of Australia's most well-decorated journalist and then realised halfway through what I was doing. Anyway.
All right. A 6. So that's 300 people.
Uh-huh.
It has what? So in oh my god, I've forgotten the name of the thing. Not Planet Shakers. I was going to say Planet Shakers.
City builders.
City builders.
City builders.
How many people roughly?
Okay, do you know what? Do you want to know something really funny? Dad
Yes.
used to prophesy about having 300 all the time.
Oh my god!
So in me rolling that dice and you multiplying that number, I have just achieved my father's dream.
Wow. Well, congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you. It's an
So
auspicious moment.
it was. Oh man, I don't know how this works. All right, so it was less than 300 then, I'm assuming.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so first of all, let's call City Builders is the group that I exited. I call it a cult.
Yep.
It's probably best for you to call it a church.
Okay,
And
yes.
we'll just get the inference.
Yeah.
I mean, I've said that I believe it's a cult on national TV. So that pretty much, that's my opinion. But the thing is with cults is nobody can designate that is a cult or that is not. It's all in the nuance. It's all in the subtext. And people who leave toxic groups, they're all going to say it's a cult. It's whether or not there's measures of coercive control and all this different stuff in there that makes it a cult or not. So me with 300 people, that's a problematic amount of people.
Yes.
They're hard to control.
Right.
So what I'm going to do in this cult is I'm going to create a crack team of leaders
Right.
that I can have direct impact into.
Beautiful. So you're delegating.
I'm not delegating, I'm cloning. So what I've got is these 12 people who have leaders underneath them, who have leaders underneath them. So it's a very hierarchical system of leadership. And to get up that hierarchy, you have to conform to
Right.
the next level up. But it's not called conforming. come to leadership training, Phoenix.
I would love
You'll
to.
love it.
Yeah.
You'll learn public speaking. You'll get more confident. You'll also learn really how to get people's deepest secrets out of them so that you can empower them.
Right.
That's what we're calling it. We're calling it empowerment. But in Scientology, they call it auditing.
Yes.
In the Nexium cult, there were these, I don't know what they called those sessions. I can't remember, but it was one-on-one sessions, and it's really accountability, and you're giving all of your private information to people so they can help you through your blockages.
Right.
There are some yoga cults.
Yeah.
There are some, like, there's this.
Oh, there's a lot of yoga
There's
cults.
a lot of, like,
Yeah.
just anything can be a cult if there's these kind of measures in it. But I want ambitious people who are also a little bit fractured.
Right.
I'm looking specifically for people who look at me with stars in their eyes and go, I can be like her.
Yeah.
And this is going to help me with my brokenness. And I'm going to help them through their brokenness.
Right.
And I'm going to create in them a sense of indebtedness. Oh, I owe my life to Claire. She's given me so much. She's given me so much. And every time I've done what Claire wants me to do, things have gone well. And that starts to create a mythology around me.
You. Yeah.
And they start to spread that mythology downwards. And then I start what I call the peacock feather duster cycle.
Okay.
Now, basically, when you're inside a group like this, the leader doesn't want to give away their power. So what they'll do is they'll rotate, like they'll give you favor, that's the peacock. And they'll be like, oh my gosh, look how well Phoenix is doing. Like, you've just moved through so many blockages. You look at your confidence is brewing. You're like, you've got more money in the bank. You've got more friends. You've got more influence at work. God's really using you to take over and, wow, Phoenix. And you get stage time and you might get promoted up that chain. And then when I see you getting too cocky, I'm going to beat you down a peg.
Oh my God. Okay.
Yeah. And I'm going to take away your privileges. You're not going to be able to be on stage with a music team for a while. I'm going to suggest that you step down from youth leadership for a while, because really there's some areas of sin and arrogance, and you need to repent, and you need to humble yourself and really, it's kind of the self-flagellation kind of thing. It's self-mortification is what they actually call it inside some groups. And that having tasted the peacock life, now you're in the feather duster life. Mm-hmm. You want to be back. You want to get back to being the peacock again.
I do.
And you're going to do anything because you've lost face in front of all your friends, all the people that were below you in that tree.
Right.
And now these people who are below you in that tree go, oh, I can get to that.
Yeah, right. So you get like publicly demoted.
Yeah. But there's levels of public. It might not happen on a Sunday, but it might happen in a covenant group meeting where you've got like the top 40 leaders sitting at my feet. And we might go around the circle and I might say, God has been telling me this needs to happen.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, right.
How do you feel? What's God telling you? Now you, the first person to answer in that circle, you've got a lot of power because you can say, no, that's not going to happen. God's telling me something completely different. And if I react to you and go, no, well, that's incorrect, you're not hearing God, people might think that I'm dismissive.
Right.
But if you agree, and it gets harder to disagree as subsequent weeks go on and, all that kind of stuff. If you agree, you're going to go, oh, yeah, God was telling me the same thing. Now we've got two people in agreement and then around to the next person in the circle. Okay, Sarah, what do you think God's telling you? Oh my gosh, yes, God was telling me the same thing. And then you go around the circle, and if anyone dissents,
right. So it's so dependent on that first person.
Yeah, but the longer these structures are established, the more just agree.
Yeah.
So once if you've actually spoken out in disagreement in one of these groups, you know how the group just turns on you.
Wow, yeah.
And you realise, okay, all my social connections are in this, all my financial connections are in this, whether or not I'm seen as a leader, seen as in alignment is all in this. I need to toe the line.
Yeah.
And then we also have, in my cult, we'll have prophetic training, which is how to hear the voice of God, how to prophesy over people and find that emotional weak spot that you can then minister into. It's actually, I don't know whether the prophetic gift is real. I identify as agnostic with atheistic fantasies.
Okay.
But the world is a big, crazy, weird, wild place. So I don't like saying, yes, something is real or no, it's not. But what I do know is you can do a lot of cold reading techniques.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like the John Edwards type thing.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So you can do a lot of cold reading techniques, and you can tell off things like pupil dilation, off sweating, off, and you don't learn this explicitly. They're not going to go read somebody's pupil dilation, but you're immersed in this thing, and you need to find answers, and you need to seem like you're on the cutting edge. So you'll learn to read people in a really, really interesting way before you even say a word or take a posture in a room. You've read everyone in it.
Yeah.
You know who's feeling testy, you know who's feeling emotional, you know who's feeling confident, you know who's in favour, you know who's out of favour. You've read all that before you say a word, especially if you're a woman, especially if you're queer.
Right. Okay.
So, yeah.
So
Again, super funny.
No, it's so interesting. But this is how, like, I just need this knowledge. So.
The question was, can a cult be good, wasn't it?
No. We were just talking about 300 people.
Yeah.
But now I know that, like, okay, so you got 300 people, and it's structured in this way with your leadership. Your 12. Did we say 12?
Yep, I'm going with 12 because I'm like Christ.
Yeah.
The 12 disciples.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay, so this is because obviously religion, it plays a huge part. So your cult is because it's familiar, I guess. We're going to go with Christianity as
we're going to go with
base.
We're going to go with mine is an evangelical cult.
Evangelical,
yeah.
Right.
And I say evangelical because there's Christian. It's very much the modern Christianity. Is it anything to do with Jesus? No, not really, because evangelicalism. I mean, look at Hillsong, look at Planet Shakers, inherently capitalist.
Yeah.
And yet Jesus was anti-capitalist. We see him overthrowing tables in the temple, calling them, we see the modern Christianity or the modern evangelical thing is inherently politically interested, and yet Jesus existed as an irritant to the political system of the day, whereas church now is trying to become the political system of the day.
Yeah.
So evangelicalism is to me is a pseudo-Christian movement.
Yes.
But that's my opinion. But it definitely is the kind of the cultural zeitgeist that we exist within. So I'm going with the pseudo-Christian cult. I'm bringing a lot of extra biblical revelation in myself because I can hear directly from God.
Yeah.
New revelation,
Classic.
New stuff. It's fresh. It's unique, and it's
Classic.
And,
okay, but so shelter. Mm-hmm. So in City Builders, did you guys all live together or?
No, a lot of churches. I mean, we weren't a Jonestown.
Yeah.
We did buy land outside of Sale for a while,
Mm-hmm.
but in a town the size of Sale, you don't need a compound because everyone's 5 minutes from everyone.
Exactly. Right.
So, whereas in a larger population centre, it's more difficult to build those intense, everyday personal connections. That's very difficult to do in a larger centre. So you want somewhere that is kind of rural or interface.
Right.
So I'd be going to kind of Druin.
Right. Okay. So we're overtaking a small town. So rather than a commune or something like Scientology where you're still within society, it's something in the middle. So small. Yeah. Regional-ish town, Druin?
Yeah, I'd be going to
Druin.
And you know what? I just said it off the top of my head. But back when I was a Christian fundamentalist young adult fiction novel writer.
There was a Tumblr involved, or was this like a
physical books?
Okay. Oh, okay.
Of which I sold a lot.
Right.
Anyway, I did actually plant a cult in Druin. I'm in a church in Druin. In one of those books. And I chose Druin. Jeez, I forgot about that. Far out. I'll never forget. I'm name dropping, I'm sorry. But when Nick Mackenzie came over for dinner to meet Patrick and to talk with both of us, Patrick's like, "Oh, we've got Claire's books here. Do you want to see them?" And I was like, "No, it didn't happen. Do not give Nick Mackenzie one of my books. They don't exist. Don't try to find one." Anyway, so I started one in Druin in the second of the books. And the reason is it's interface. So it's a growth corridor, but it's not big yet.
Yeah.
So there's still going to be logical needs in that town that are going to provide opportunities for me to grow.
Yeah.
Youth engagement is always one.
Yeah.
So a youth group, obviously, it's the first thing. It's also a very pliable age. There's also a lot of angst. Like teenagers are this just cauldron of angst and hormones, and there's a lot of ways I can play with shame and ambition to create exactly the right recipe to bring them along my pipeline.
Right.
And they're very teachable. So I can tell them that if they don't give me 10% of their wage, then God's going to judge them, and then
Right.
they're not in alignment. But I can't do that until after they've come into this thought reform process and after they've formed these really strong friendships. Otherwise, they're going to call bullshit. So,
Right.
Yeah.
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 So you, I mean, you target that.
yeah.
You appeal to that before you start bringing in, like, you know, taking part of their wage. So you
Yeah.
you solve all the sort of emotional needs and all that
Yeah.
first, and communal needs, and okay.
Yeah.
Right.
You load the dice.
So
before
you're
you roll it.
recruiting. So are you targeting, in terms of recruitment? Is it easier to go straight for teenagers,
Yep.
or
Yep.
like young vulnerable adults?
The Venn diagram
Okay.
is significant. So teenagers are better
Right.
because young adults, the closer they get to age 25, the more developed their neural pathways are. But also, ask anyone in evangelicalism, once they've had the sex, you know, it's very difficult to control them. They're just
Right.
going to want more of the sex. So, you know, you got to get them while they're virgins.
Right. Okay. So we're targeting virgins.
We're targeting virgins.
All right, yeah,
It's
yeah.
getting younger and younger. We're going to be targeting very, very young high school students. No. So,
Oh,
but,
this is so dark. Yeah.
but it is dark. That's
Yeah.
true. There was this whole, like, purity culture was this movement in the 2000s. There were songs about it.
Oh yeah, Jonas Brothers, that whole thing.
Oh yeah, but
Yeah,
there was this Rebecca St. James was this huge Christian artist. She wrote this song, and I am waiting for you, darling. Wait for me too. And then there's this whole thing about how she'll forgive him if he has the sex first. Her brothers are now, like, she's kind of fallen off the music scene. Her little brothers are a band called For King and Country. They've written this song. It's called Priceless. I see you dressed in right, every wrong made right. And you're like, oh, so you're forgiving her for having the sex? And it's like, it's just like, it's a whole...
Oh man, yeah.
Yeah, it's a whole thing. But you can really easily kind of weaponize shame and superstition there. I was reading a meme just this morning on a meme page, an evangelical meme page, that talks about if you share body fluids with someone, you also get their demons. And
So
I
what was
was
their
like,
approach to COVID then? Because COVID was like,
I was outside the fold by COVID.
oh right.
I was
Yeah.
outside the fold by COVID, but I only have rumour and innuendo to give you there.
Okay.
I don't know. But a lot of... I'm actually just about to... I do have a friend who's writing a book on conspiracy theories in evangelicalism, because the anti-vax movement within churches in America was huge.
Yeah.
And in Australia too, I would suggest. Yeah, because, like, there was this whole thing about whether the vaccine is kind of the mark of the beast, 666 is on the skull, whether
Yeah.
it changes your DNA, you can no longer get into heaven, and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
I don't have that kind of inside information from city builders. But
you can imagine how easily that would
Yeah,
fit.
yeah.
Yeah.
But reverting to the youth thing, the other end of the spectrum is elderly, frail and elderly. Because these are the people that have been cast off by society. Their kids don't visit anymore, and they've got a huge amount of money in their will.
Yeah.
So I would want to be targeting youth, because local shires, they want youth activities. So that's going to get me in good with the political, the not-for-profit sector. You know, yeah, we've got this youth group, it's free to attend, yada, yada, yada. Really great for youth engagement, really great for confidence, you know. Send us your youth, and you'll be met with a lot of encouragement from that. But
Keeping
then
them off the streets.
yeah, absolutely, and out of the drugs, and you know, all that, and the sex. But then you'll have the frail and elderly on the other end, and I want their will money.
Wow. Okay. So, what's the like a day in the life of
Okay,
a cult member?
all right.
Yeah.
Depends on which stage of indoctrination you're in.
Yes.
So if you're in a fresh kind of stage of indoctrination, it all hinges on intellectual bypassing. I don't want you thinking about whether or not this is true, or whether or not it's healthy, whether or not it's real. I want you to just be in boots and all. I want your relationships with outsiders to fracture a little bit. I want your friends and your family outside to be less important than your friends and your family on the inside. So I'm going to work you pretty hard. I'm going to have you exhausted. So I want to have you at, like, you've passed love bombing. You've joined a couple of courses.
So is this a teenager or is this like a...
Oh, if you're a teenager, great.
Okay. Yeah.
Great. So you came in through youth group. You got so many new friends through youth group.
Right.
And then I'm like, you know what? You show real leadership potential. Let's get you in a leadership course. So now, in addition to study and church on Sunday, I'm also going to have you out on a Wednesday night doing leadership training.
Right.
And then I'm like, dude, you know...
Killing it.
You're killing it. Somebody told me you also play guitar.
Right.
Do you want to be on the music team?
Yeah, I do play guitar.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, of course you do. You're so talented. Come be on the music team. Of course, we have music practice on a Tuesday night, and it is a requirement that our music team is also in a Bible study and that they also attend a prayer meeting a week. So now you're not just a teenager who's at school and at youth group on a Friday night. You're also at music practice on Tuesday. You're also at a Bible study on Thursday. You're also at the leadership training on Wednesday.
Yeah.
You're already at youth group on Friday.
Right.
You got to do your homework on Saturday, but you also want social engagement. And I'm going to have you up early on a Monday morning for a prayer meeting, maybe a Thursday morning prayer meeting as well.
You're basically taking all the time away from them as well.
Like, no, you're volunteering the time because you want to be on the music team and you want to be a leader.
I want to do this.
You want to do this.
I do want to do this.
You want to do this. And it's also, it's intoxicating. You must feel this as a comedian. You don't know what kind of crowd you're going to get when you turn up to do a gig, and you might bomb. Yeah. And you might bomb in front of a benevolent crowd, or you might bomb in front of a hostile crowd. You don't know. And
I've done both.
Yeah. And we all have to do both. Yeah. Or you might do great, and you might just get that absolute rush of the people love me. Yeah. When you are in a church situation, it's entirely different because everyone wants you to succeed. They want to have a great worship session. And if they do, it's this immersive kind of altered state of consciousness. We're all sharing this moment together. There's connectedness in it, and you're on stage and you're doing this. I mean, God's doing this, but he's doing it through you. And doesn't that feel wonderful?
It does feel wonderful.
But don't get too arrogant about it though, God, or I'm going to have to pull you off the music team until you can humble yourself, man.
Please don't.
Please don't. I will comply. So this is where it gets really, it gets really interesting.
Right.
And so you want a teenager to be confident, not too confident. You want them to be engaged fully, and the more tired they are, the less time they're going to spend. My makeup's on your table now. That's disgusting. The less time they're going to sit at home thinking, is this healthy? Is this having good effects on me? The teenage brain isn't going to work like that. Yeah. They're thinking all their friends are there, their connections are there, their self-worth is there. It could be years before you wake up, and when you do, you might be married, you might have kids, you might have investments in the church, your employment may be tied up with it, you may live in a share house if none of these things have happened. Your public face may be tied up with it. You may be involved in politics or in business or in the local business community or stuff like that. It's all tied up. Wow. So stakes are high.
Yeah. So basically cult member, day in life, they're just living their normal 9 to 5 or going to school, like within wider society, but all their extra spare time is tied up in all this, youth development and all that kind of thing. Okay. Yeah. Right. This is terrifying. So the last part of the build phase, I guess, is the financial side of it. So how does that work in terms of how much money do I need to give you as a cult member?
10%.
10%?
Yeah.
Of everything I earn. Right.
It's in Malachi 3:10.
Right.
And I will have someone up on stage every week talking over the offerings.
Right.
And it becomes this mystical sort of Christian insurance policy. Like, if I pay my 10% to Apostle Clare, or to the church that Apostle Clare has founded. All's going to go well with me. I'm not going to suffer tragedy or misfortune or, God's got my back.
And then
because in Malachi 3:10 it says, "Prove me now in this," after like just telling people to bring the tithes of everything to the storehouse.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. So, but then as the leader, you're getting 10% from your 300 members. What happens with that money?
Obviously, you've got amenities, you've got buildings,
Yep.
you've got you've got stuff like that. But if you've got 300 members, and I'm going to say maybe 150 of them are going to be like
Earning.
Yeah. And I want them to do well. I want them in positions of authority. So I want them to be earning over 100K.
Right.
So if I'm getting 10K from 150 people in tithes per year, and I'm getting it tax-free.
Right.
Because I'm a religious organisation.
Oh my God. Yeah. Right.
And I'm running it on volunteer labour.
Okay.
Apart from me.
Yes. So, what about any sort of like little rules or anything, right? So obviously we have it's a Christian-based church.
Yeah.
What are the rules? So like you can take from your previous experience, but what's something that I don't know, maybe is illegal in wider society that you might legalize within the cult, or vice versa, something that's you can't do as a cult member, but you could do if you were outside the cult, kind of thing. Or just any little rules or laws that you would like to implement.
I'm actually going to, okay. So, trigger warning. If this brings anything up for you, Lifeline 131114. If you're overseas in America, 988. What cults do often is very similar to what will happen in a relationship, like a domestic violence relationship where there's coercive control. It's called the Darvo method. So, and it is, oh gosh, I've forgotten it, but it involves dismissing their claims. It involves, I can't remember it. I'll find it. You can post it, but DARVO, but it involves reversing victim and offender.
Right.
So what happens in a lot of cult situations is if somebody raises a concern, or hey, that's the spirit of offence talking. You're speaking out of the spirit of offence. You're dishonouring the man of God. You're dishonouring the woman of God. God can't move through you because you're offended. You might have raised an issue over sexual harassment. You might have raised an offence over sexual abuse. Why is being offended worse than the actual offence? Now, what we're seeing right now with Hillsong, Brian Houston's in court over covering up his dad's sex offences of young boys. That was covered up, all in the name of honour. And it's when you put the doctrine over person, or when it's put when you put the work is more important than people, you begin to silence offenders. Silence, not offenders. They get all the time they like. You silence abuse victims.
Yeah.
You put the burden on them to forgive. You say things like, we don't trust the systems of man, we trust the systems of God. And we actually heard Scott Morrison say this from the pulpit. We don't trust in the government of man, we trust in the government of God, just after his electoral wipeout, after losing the prime ministership, I think it was. And that's a throwaway line, but when you've grown up in these systems, what you know is that the law that we have in here, in this group, is more important than the law of society. And of course, it's kind of couched in this 10 Commandments thing, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not, steal, thou shalt not, blah, blah, blah. But there's this really vague one, honour thy mother and thy father. So, but honour is a word that can be defined however I like.
Right.
So I use this grey area.
Yeah.
Honour means you'll be accountable to me. Honour means you'll obey me. Honour means you won't question what I have to say. And as soon as you step out of that, you're out of honour. You're dishonouring me. Now, there's cultural overlays here. If you say this to somebody of Japanese descent, of Korean descent, that is like a mortal wound to dishonour.
Yeah.
So for us, whiteys who don't have such a strong kind of moral compass built into us, we have to do the pre-work and get them to a point of compliance and get them to a point where they understand that honour is everything.
Yeah.
And then I can get away with whatever I like there.
Yeah.
And the shame of, and unfortunately, this is a very real issue in a lot of, like I've spoken to so many people who have survived domestic violence relationships, for example, reported it to the church. But the church has gone, God hates divorce.
Yeah.
If you just submit better, he won't beat you up.
Yeah, right.
And now in America is a case where the right wing has infiltrated politics to a much greater degree, a much more militant degree. They started with the anti-LGBT, anti-trans rhetoric, denying gender-affirming care. That was the first thing. Overturning Roe v. Wade, which was about reproductive rights, that's been the next thing. And it's catastrophic because, ectopic pregnancies, children of rape, all this kind of stuff. Like there was a case just recently where a 9-year-old fell pregnant to her abuser, and that case went to put her through a court system for aborting the product of rape that would have killed her feasibly. Like this is the product of Roe v. Wade. And I kind of thought, where do they go after this? Where does the right wing go after they've denied gender affirming care, after they've denied LGBT rights, after they've denied, reproductive rights? There's no fault divorce.
Yeah.
And they're going after that at the moment. And when you take away the legal recourse for an abuse victim to say, I want out of this relationship and I don't want to tell you why, you have dead women. That is what will happen there. So it is really serious. It is really serious, the advancement of this. But nobody's gonna stand up in Parliament and go, I want dead women. They're not gonna do that. So they get very good at spin.
Yeah.
And also I think convincing themselves that they are acting on behalf of a loving God who loves us so much that he'll send us all to eternal conscious torment if we don't do what he says.
Right.
And but the cognitive dissonance there is like, okay, how okay, fine. But it's built in culturally because we're bathed in this Judeo-Christian norm right from quite early, unless we are from those savage, unevangelicalized, uncolonized, lucky tribes. So yeah.
All right. So
I just said a lot there. I'm really sorry.
And
I was saying
it's so
coming...
much to take in. And, literally every sentence is that could be another jumping off point. But I mean, I've built this structure and I need to follow the structure. But again,
because I ruined you last time.
we could do this for 4 fucking hours.
I'm sorry.
All right. So, but that's the end of the build phase. Right?
Okay.
And
right.
to be honest, fucking terrifying.
Oh no, but it's the will of God.
But it's real. It is.
God
okay.
is shining through me, transforming the city. It's funny how many cults are really obsessed with city influence. Have you seen Wild Wild Country?
Yeah.
It took over the local council, and
but
then they were
that's something that hasn't come up in previous pods that I've done so far. Is that infiltrating of a wider society? Like everybody has kept everything very contained within their little culty commune thing.
I am the answer to the world. We must expand and take over the world.
Okay.
What did Charles Manson call it? Helter Skelter.
Yeah. Oh my God. Okay. All right. I'm not going to get sidetracked by that, but there's so much to unpack there. Okay. So scenarios.
Okay.
Right. Because we do have to. This could end up being like an hour and a half podcast, but we won't do that. So. This is where the cards come in.
Yeah, and don't forget, I've got a date to get to with my no mascara and my shaved off eyebrow. I'm hot stuff, man. I'm just like, woo.
We're gonna do 2 or 3.
Okay.
So this is where you pick a card. They are shuffled. You can shuffle them again, and then I'm gonna run you through a scenario.
I'm a cult leader. I trust no one. I'm just kidding. I'm also really bad at shuffling, so I'm gonna put these down before I. All right.
Draw a card.
3 of diamonds.
Okay. Okay. Right. So you have chosen the rival cult card. So a rival and similar sized cult has set up on the property adjacent to yours. You can see that some of your cult members are becoming a little curious about the rival cult and what they had to offer. So what do you do in this scenario?
I'm going to need to take over that cult somehow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, first of all, let's just talk a little mysticism here. 3 of diamonds. You've given me the Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit are on my side.
Yes. Okay.
Diamonds are formed under pressure.
Right.
So this is going to be a time of pressure for us as a church family to gather together to seek the blessing of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit to make sure that we're on the right track. Now, Phoenix, I've noticed that you're, you've been hanging out with some people, and what I want to know is what needs are they fulfilling in you that we're not? Because I want to use your insight, to help me become a better leader. Oh my God. And I know that when you came here, you were so broken, and God's used me to give you so many opportunities. Remember all of that indebtedness that I'm talking about. Yeah. So I'm using the indebtedness. I'm using the memory. I'm using your kind of the part of you that still wants to be the peacock. I want you to tell me what I'm not offering you that these people are. Right. So that you become part of the answer.
Oh my God. This is terrifying.
This is just... I think I'm in the wrong line of work. I could be making a lot more money if I just decide to start a cult. So there's that.
So you go directly to your cult members that have shown curiosity in the other. Do you ever approach the rival cult?
I use a 3-pronged approach. What I'll do is my leaders, and honestly, if some fringe dwellers go, that's fine, because I want the high quality people. I don't want the people who are out on the fringe that I haven't given leadership opportunity to yet.
Okay.
They may be the people who they're less shiny, they have less money, they might struggle with some things that I'm just not qualified to help them with. They might have mental illnesses. So I just let them go.
Right.
And when they do...
Yeah, that's interesting. Okay.
When they do, I use the guilt over that to talk to my leaders down that chain. Phoenix, you've lost numbers from a few of your downlines. Why has that happened? I've given you so much. I've laid down my life for you. You were this broken, no good kid. You were involved in this and that. And then I found you, and you're a music leader now. You've got a great job, you're a public speaker, great relationship. Your life is going well. What did I ever do to you? Do you let these people walk out the door? And you're the feather duster again, and you want to be the peacock again. Yeah. So, and you start managing down the line, just like Alison Mack did in Nexium, to get other people, to get other people to comply, to kind of, and you start advising people to actually go pick off the people at the edges of that other church and bring them across to me. Meanwhile, I befriend the pastor.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And I start just offering him tips and tricks. This is what you got to understand about this local community. This is what you got to understand about, and I start making sure that he's targeting areas I don't care about. But I might also give him some bad advice about people that causes things to blow up in his church.
Yeah.
And,
But what are the chances of because you know what you're doing, and do you have to suss out the level of awareness of, do they know what they're doing kind of thing? Is it you're pretending to befriend, but you know that it's a takeover strategy, and you know if they're aware? Because I'm picturing when you say when you have an AI chatbot, and then you make them talk to each other, and
so fun.
Do they know? Are they going to bring up the fact that they're both
Did you ever
AI?
do that with the information service on the phone, and do this?
No, I didn't.
Before the internet? Oh God, I'm old. Anyway, yeah, good. Well done. I'm going to give you the tea. Okay. It's my observation. It's my opinion.
Yeah.
So there is actually an affiliated church with City Builders in Sale.
Right.
And they're both affiliated with the ISAT network. One was considerably smaller. So straight away, City Builders is the big sister church, and this other one is the little sister church. And Dad began to reach out to all of these littler churches and offer, we called it School of Spiritual Advancement. I think the one that's just about to start running is the School of the Spirit. where they actually talk about strategies to take over, strategies to, like the prophetic word, all this kind of stuff. So we actually reached out to these littler churches and brought them in the fold as consumers of the information. So I would offer them training.
Right.
And then I would position myself as the big kahuna. And I would position my leaders as more competent than their leaders, and I would try to basically introduce my doctrine. So it's not like I've got a rival church. It's like I've got two churches in the same town.
My God.
That's what I'd do.
Yeah. Okay.
And it's all balanced on my charisma.
Yeah. But that's a huge responsibility though, right? Because it's like...
Which is why there's such a big degree of, and I mean, you can look it up on, I don't know, Forbes or Psychology Today, like the top 100 professions with psychopaths or narcissists in it. Yes, it's a big responsibility. And you know what? A lot of pastors burn out because being a megalomaniac and being in control of so many individual lives. And that's why you build systems. I'm only controlling the 12.
Yeah. Right. So you don't have, so say like one of your random sort of cult members couldn't come directly to you with something.
No,
right.
I am a myth. I am a legend. I am only to be accessed through somebody in the inner circle. They have to get in good with you. But, sometimes though when I'm walking into church, I'm going to make them feel good and I'm going to be like, oh my God, great shoes. And they're just going to feel like God himself has commented on their shoes. Like,
oh my God.
And it's, you create this kind of mythology.
The myth. Yeah.
The myth, the legend, but so much of this on a neurochemical level, the dopamine rush, the reward center of your brain lights up when someone inaccessible has turned to you and noticed you and approved of you in some way. And then that whole, the peacock feather duster cycle, the need for connection, all of that, like, it's intoxicating, but it's also debilitating, and we use both.
God, it's so true. Okay, all right. I can't get sidetracked. Okay, so one more. I think we've got time for one more card, and then I'm going to give you there's a cult rating at the end, by the way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Five
clubs.
Of thingamajiggies. Because I'm a really stable genius and I know what they are. And I'm finding that 5 is the number of grace. 5 is the number of grace. Grace, the unmerited favor of God upon me right now. Yeah.
Okay.
That's the number of grace. And I'm noticing three leaves to these clovers. The Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, they're still here with us today. Can you feel it? Just close your eyes.
Yeah, I can feel it.
Just put your hand on your heart there. Yeah. What's your question?
So 5 is the... So this is the pandemic. So a deadly contagious disease has broken out within your cult.
Oh my God.
So...
Okay.
I'm going to give you another dice roll to determine the percentage of your followers that are affected.
Okay.
So if you'd like to roll that dice.
I'll just get my wank hand out again. 3.
3. Okay.
3%.
So that's what is that? 15? No. Oh my God. I can't do the maths. 15%.
Okay, 15%.
Yeah. So you got 15%.
Okay.
Affected by a deadly disease. They don't have that much of a chance of survival. What do you do?
This is an opportunity.
Okay.
This is an opportunity. It depends on whether or not they're a peacock or feather duster at this point, how I react to their individual case. From the pulpit, I'm going to say that God disciplines those he loves. But also, if you're out of the covering, it's an opportunity for the enemy to target you. This is an opportunity for us as a church to come together, to really up the accountability. You know, if some of you are out there using porn, you're the reason. Some of you are getting drunk on the weekends. You're the reason that God can judge your brothers and sisters. We're a covenant. We're in this together. Yeah. Why are you leaving us open to the fiery darts of the enemy?
Right.
Why are you doing this to us? God. And so then the guilt is on all of the church, and all of the churches like come into the fold. I'm going to target Dan Andrews pretty heavily. The socialist, and actually, if you Google Nicole Werner's Like there's, she's the right winger who's standing out in Warrandyte at the moment.
Right.
She was talking about this left wing woke, socialist government that has come in and taken over our lives, and it's great rhetoric to push from the pulpit. Make people fear the government, make them seek God's government, make them all feel guilty for their secret sin that God is seeing and that is leaving us open to the fiery darts of the enemy. Now you're feeling guilty when you see somebody else in the church suffer from COVID. Now you feel like you're responsible for their death and you feel like you need to be more involved. But I'm also going to say to some of these people, I've got somebody who's on their deathbed, I'm going to go to them and say, you know what? Now, if they're a peacock, okay, if they're a feather duster, I'm going to say, look, you should have repented, man. But if they're a peacock, I'm going to say, I'm so sorry that this has happened. I'm so sorry that God is using you as an example to the church of what happens when people step out in secret sin. But you know what? God sacrificed his own son. He sent Jesus to die for us, for the sins of mankind, and you're dying for us too.
Yeah. Jesus. So and then is that an opportunity, obviously, to take their money as well, right? Like
you're wearing the martyr's crown.
Yeah.
You don't need your earthly possessions. Rewrite your will, bitch.
So that's something that obviously happens, right? It's like a lot of people will leave all their earthly possessions, meaning all their money, to the church.
Yeah, I mean, I hope they don't, but I think they do.
Yeah.
I was told this week that an elderly lady, they were actually had a huge soft spot for her. I'm really annoyed that I didn't know she'd died.
Yeah.
She bought me my first piano.
Okay.
And she was a really wonderful woman who I think had a legitimate faith in God. And I think sometimes had actually confronted my dad on things that he was, that she perceived he was doing wrong. And she was a beautiful lady. She really was. But I think Dad knew exactly how to peacock and feather duster her.
Right.
And I wonder whether her money went to her children or whether it went to city builders. I also am aware of the fact that a lot of it gets tied up in multi-level marketing. So,
That's a whole thing in itself too.
And a lot of multi-level marketing businesses, like in academic literature, they don't usually use the word cult so much as well, it's kind of been phased out for high demand group, because if there's a group that has a thought reform process and it has like these like different levels and stuff, like multi-level marketing can be a cult.
Yeah. Well, I feel like it uses a lot of the same techniques, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and same structures.
Yeah. So bring it into an actual cult.
Yeah.
You've already got 10% of their money, and now they're working hard to build your business.
Yeah. I mean, all right. I'm
sitting pretty.
You've done. So this is my dilemma now, right? So at the end of these, I am meant to give a cult rating, and that is based on. Usually, it's based on whether or not I would want to join the cult if it sounds appealing to me. And with yours, I do not want to join because it's fucking terrifying. But I could see that it would work so well.
You know that you just came to a Friday night youth. It was a messy games night. All your friends were going, Phoenix.
Oh,
it was a messy.
So much here.
It was a messy games night that you came to. It was like you were going to be sitting at home just kind of smashing PlayStation, and those were your options. Instead, you got to come and meet a whole lot of people.
I did.
And then you got to meet me, and you'd heard all of these things about me, like how wonderful I was. Obviously I'm a drop dead gorgeous and clearly well put together person. And I said hello to you, and you felt like the lights come on. You felt like God herself had spoken to you.
Okay.
It's not about where you get to 20 years down the track.
Yeah.
It's about that messy games night and then the leadership training, Phoenix. You got to be the school captain because of this.
I did.
And then because of that, you got into a great uni. I gave you a reference. You got a reference from God from your university. You got stage time because you're such a talented guitar player.
I am a talented guitar player.
You got to be a leader. You got to lead small groups and all these other people that you get to control.
I am a leader. I do get control. 10 out of 10.
Thank you.
Claire, this has been incredible. It has been funny, but it's been there's just so much to unpack. So where can people find you and hopefully unpack more of this?
Yeah, of this.
You got 2 podcasts?
Yeah, I've got,
Yes.
okay, so look for me on Instagram at Unchurchable Pod.
Yeah.
And on the Twitters, however long that lasts,
Yeah.
thanks to Elon,
Yeah.
at Clare _McIvor.
Yeah.
But there's a million ways to spell that wrong, so we're going to pop it in the show notes.
Oh, well, yeah.
And clareheathmciver.com is where you can find my blogs.
Beautiful.
So,
All right. Clare McIvor, thank you for building a cult with me.
Good luck being my rival.
Let's build a cult.